thousands of years, humans have existed next to a world of unimaginable horror. Very rarely encountered, the line between these worlds is not impermeable. If a human walks too close to the edge, there is a chance that we pass to the side.
Concluse is a short indie horror game that was released in June of 2018. I've had this game on my radar ever since about August of that same year. I installed it and I played it for a bit, but I was never really thinking about it until about a week ago, where, for some reason, Concluse was floating around in my mind. On June 16th, the day that I'm writing this script, I decided to just play the game and complete it once and for all. So I sat down, I loaded it up, and played the most disappointing horror game that I've ever played from start to finish. And I loved it. That's it, I just loved it. Let's get on with the video. Disclaimer, this is not a walkthrough for Concluse, and as such, I won't be diving too deep into every detail in the game. I highly recommend you play Concluse for yourself. It's free on Steam, pretty short, and basically any computer can run it. The link is going to be in the description of this video, and I'll be waiting for you when you're done. So Concluse begins the same way one of my favorite horror games does. A car ride to an unknown town in order to find your missing wife. You play as Michael Benson, a man who's in search of his wife Caroline, who for unknown reasons believes his wife to be living in a town in London named Hell. And for God knows what reason, he decides to abandon his car and take the train into the neighboring town of Cordova. We're one of two people on the train that night. The other passenger is a lovely old lady who's fast asleep. This isn't entirely odd as it is late at night, and the announcer states that you're already at the last stop on the route. What is odd is that none of the doors are open. It's almost like an unseen force is attempting to stop you from continuing your journey to hell. Nonetheless, you find a crowbar on its seat and you force the door open. You're gonna find your wife no matter what. The first thing we're greeted with upon leaving is a crystal. This is how you save, and for some odd reason there's already a grayed out save file on the list. Someone named Caleb was here before us, but unfortunately there's nothing to clue us in on who Caleb is right now. The next unsettling thing happens shortly after leaving the train platform. The exit to the station is locked up, so you have to hunt for the keys to escape. Shortly after finding another set of keys to the janitor's office, the train that you came on starts leaving. The old lady is still asleep on it, despite it being the last stop on the route. This is also where my main gripe with this game is first shown, by the way. The cutscenes. In my very little research, I discovered that the developer of this game prides themselves as mainly an animator and an artist, but they're very misguided in the belief that the cutscenes are a selling point of this game. Every single scare placed within this game is presented through one of these cutscenes, and it makes it even more laughable than it is scary. Instead of tense gameplay build-up or a jump scare, your control is randomly taken from you, and a pre-rendered cutscene plays over your camera. This is done for every single horror segment. It really removes any immersion, and it makes the game funnier than it is scary. So as the train is leaving, a cutscene plays where the player steps out and looks around for some reason. The camera intentionally moves over the monster not once but twice, and it does it slowly. Now, we don't even get that stereotypical thing where the camera moves over the monster before quickly snapping back to where the monster was, only for the monster to not be there. Instead, after a couple of seconds of looking around for God knows what reason, we zoom in on the monster with the train leaving. Hopefully the elderly woman is going to be okay. So we make it into the janitorial office, where we get our first bit of lore. Some woman with black hair is causing issues in this town, and the janitor locked up the station in order to keep anyone from entering. Despite that, he tells anyone reading the note that the keys are going to be in his locker. Not anymore. We take them and we venture out into the city, where we come to my next gripe with this game. It's dark. The first time I entered the janitorial office, I couldn't even see the janitor's locker, despite it being one of the two things in that room under a direct spotlight. This is a problem that comes along many, many times in the game, and it's extremely annoying when the only way you can find certain things is by blindly pressing interact on stuff. Now, while it never stopped me from completing the game, I can imagine people with darker monitors would find it even more annoying than I did, wandering in what can only be imagined as pitch black darkness until they find where they need to go. Now, something I neglected to mention earlier is that this game is attempting to be an ARG. The idea is that it's trying to make you believe that it's a game that you would have found in your attic, slapped into your PlayStation, and started it out blissfully unaware of the horrors that lay within it. Now, leaving the train station, we enter a small and enclosed area. A bicycle that's bent in half is sitting in front of the train station. Now, to our right is a dock. Unfortunately, we can't use the boat because we have no paddles to row it. But there is a key on the floor, so of course we take it and we continue to explore the rest of the area. On the left, there's a claustrophobic alleyway that leads to a nearby hospital. A glitchy trash can that has the body of a decapitated rat inside of it, and a door with a woman laughing hysterically behind it. The only thing we can do from here is to go forward, and when we do, another cutscene. A human body is dropped from a great height, presumably from the top of a building, but I literally can't figure out what this cutscene is showing me. Of course, we inspect the body, and it turns out he works for the hospital that we're headed towards. His body has a key card that allows us to enter said hospital, but before we get there, we have to do a puzzle. The puzzle is fairly simple to figure out. It's 2:30, but this is by far the weirdest clock puzzle design I've ever seen. The clock hands turn so fast, and they are the loudest thing in existence. Now, next to the clock is a piece of paper with strange symbols on it. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about it right now. Now, not even 5 minutes after the last cutscene, we're shown yet another. A strange black blob appears in front of us, and our attempts to run away are thwarted by a wall behind us closing. We're trapped. And then literally nothing happens. That entire cutscene was meaningless. However, now we can explore the hospital, so I guess that's good. In this hospital, our job is to find the keys that let us enter the various patients' rooms of the hospital. Our first key, key A, is on the front desk, and it leads us up to the roof. Up here, there's a pile of corpses rotting away, and a note describing that an unknown they keeps coming back, telling us that the only way to keep them at bay is to burn the bodies. It seems the bodies we just saw aren't as dead as we first thought. Going up from here is where we get to the first moment in this game that genuinely unnerved me. On the roof, we're tasked with finding 3 hidden tapes in order to progress. They're fairly easy to find, and I initially laughed at the absurdity of the first 2. I mean, why is this person recording themselves getting a package at their front door? But the third one freaked me the fuck out. The person recording this tape is being compelled to play another one, and when they do, it reveals that it's of the same area that we're in right now. No, it's of us, the player, right now. Whoever recorded this in the past can see us right now, and they're right behind you. The tape ends, and we turn around, but there's no one there. Instead, there's a key where the person filming would have been. This was the only moment that the cutscenes in this game sucked me in rather than pulling me out. Unlike the other cutscenes in this game, this one happened naturally by me choosing to play a tape. Unnaturally, however, the footage was of actual gameplay. This unnerved me because it felt as if another player or person was hunting me down, and I could do nothing but sit there and watch as my player sat there and watched for his inevitable fate to loom closer and closer, only for nothing to happen. The key that appeared behind us is key B, and it allows us to explore most of the rooms in the hospital. Now, while most of them look pretty interesting, there's only one room that actually has anything we need to continue. So we grab a decapitated rat head and some matches. Now, in the same room, we get another interesting dose of lore. The rat head we found is from a patient who went to the hospital. He'd killed the rat after claiming it was tormenting him. Well, you remember that trash can rat? It's time to bring him back to life. Upon reuniting the rat with his head, he skitters into the laughing woman's door, and we can finally enter that room. But there's no one there. Instead, we're greeted with a long corridor filled with missing posters. If you couldn't tell already, something horribly wrong happened here. Now, apparently, this hall is meant to be part of the hospital, but it could have fooled me. Initially, I thought when I entered this area that it was some sort of apartment complex. In retrospect, I should have figured that it was part of the hospital, as the hospital elevator is in here. But why would I think that? It's an entrance that's directly next to the train station that has no indication that it's a part of the hospital. It's good game design, however, because it saves on backtracking. You can just go directly up to the roof. And now why do we have to go to the roof? Well, in this area, we get a key card to that hospital elevator and a gas canister. There's one thing for certain now. It's time to burn those corpses. Upon setting the corpses on fire, I assumed that something would happen, that I'd be in danger. But nothing happens. The corpses burn away, and even the bones aren't left. Left behind is the final hospital key, and there's only one room that's been locked this entire time. Within it is a book titled The Cordova Key, and inside of it is a key to the cipher that we found earlier, next to the clock puzzle. The message on the paper reads 11:45 to go to hell. With that, we get a key. It's the key to hell. Are we there? Are we finally going to hell to find our wife? No, we're still in Cordova. We enter Cordova Park, to be specific. Now, in this park, there's a couple of oddities, like 3 hoops in a basketball court, and a dog that throws up a key. Nothing else can really be done in this area, but there is a sewer right next to the entrance, and the key that the dog threw up is a perfect fit for that lock. Now, within the sewer area, we get introduced to a new type of lock. A button lock, where in order to open the way forward, we have to press all the buttons in the area. That's all well and good, right? It makes sense, and it forces us to explore the new sewers area that we unlocked in order to find all the buttons. Unfortunately, there's another puzzle in this area that I have dubbed the Demon Compass Puzzle. This one annoyed me to no end. In order to solve this puzzle, we have to find a piece of paper that has what I can only describe as a cheerleader song.
North, south, west, east, that's the way of the demon feast.
Unsure of what to do with that paper, we explore until we find a ladder that leads into a strange capsule. Using the only lever in that room, we rotate the walls in order to reveal different combinations of numbers. Now, after aligning the compass on the wall with the color of the numbers, we get an 18-number-long combination. And to make it even more annoying, it's just the numbers 1 and 5 repeated. Did we really need 18 digits for a simple code? It was already a pretty interesting puzzle, having to figure out how to align the compass in order to get the digits. And the fact that it's a redundant combination of 1s and 5s. Why couldn't it have just been a 4-digit combination? Whatever though, the game's nearly over. From the sewers we can get a key to the highway, and there lays the worst cutscene that this game has to bear. This is the game's second meta thing. A monster speaks directly to us, the player, telling us that they can now go into the real world after us, and we are in danger because of playing this game. But the immersion is broken at literally the first word, because the scary monster thing uses the letter U while attempting to be scary. Like, are you kidding me right now? The Sawblade Shadow Monster is talking in early 2000s slang. Anyway, we're teleported into the twisted versions of the sewer, hospital, and train station, all mixed together. And this is my least favorite area of the game so far. There's so little of note here that the 20 minutes I spent in this area felt like ages of looking around and doing absolutely nothing. I started to feel tired and annoyed at how bland this area was. I can only describe it as a snooze fest of finding keys and getting a number combination that requires a calculator, because realistically, no one's going to do long multiplication on paper to solve a shitty indie game's math puzzle. However, I do have something to compliment this area on: the visual and set design. It looks amazing for the monotone color scheme that this game has. Once you make it to the twisted hospital and train station again, it's unforgettable. Your first task is to find a way into the train, and this is the second time I was legitimately scared in this game. Upon finding a key and entering the subway, we're greeted with this. That sweet old lady who was sleeping and minding her own business, she's dead now, decapitated, and the only key to her escape is sitting right in her chest cavity. Now, when I first saw this, I jumped. This is the first time we ever see a detailed model of a corpse in this game, and it sent shivers down my spine. This is also the first time we get to see what happens to the victims of the creatures that roam Cordova. Based on the fact that a large portion of her body is still intact, that implies that these creatures don't kill for food. They kill for the fun of it. They left her body up in order to taunt anyone else coming this way, and the implication that this woman was somehow harmed because of my expedition to find my wife genuinely terrifies me. Nonetheless, the search for our wife continues, as there's no other option other than going forward. Doing some annoying puzzles, we eventually make it back into the sewers. There's a new room we can enter, and within it lies something pretty disturbing. This next section might be too much for some people, as it includes the topics of suicide, school shootings, and children dying. If you'd like to skip this section, I'll put a timestamp on the screen, as well as in the description, so you can immediately skip this section of the video. There's 7 sheets of loose leaf from a child's diary sitting on a bench. It describes the story of Caleb and his classmates. One day, a school shooter entered Caleb's school and shot not only the teacher, but all the students in Caleb's class. For some odd reason, however, they didn't die. They woke up in Cordova with a little memory as to how they got there. One of the students, Katie, starts to see creatures as she calls shakers, and while the others attempt to pass it off as fear, they all start seeing them sooner or later. The children quickly adopt a student named Owen as their leader and attempt to find food and shelter in this terrifying place. One student, Jessica, decides to give up on attempting to survive and lets one of these shakers kill her. Upon seeing what these creatures can do, the students find shelter in a nearby hospital. This doesn't last long, as one night, all the students go missing, aside from Caleb, Owen, and Katie, the initial student who first saw the shakers. However, she's not doing so well. She's on the ceiling, shaking just as the creatures did, but eventually, she fades away into the ceiling, never to be seen again. Caleb and Owen luckily find their way into the sewers, where it seems to be safe from the monstrous creatures above ground. Our next note cuts to a few days later. Owen's gone missing after wandering off to use the bathroom. The walls and ground have rusted, and in what seems like a cruel attempt at driving Caleb to the same fate as Jessica, the force that controls this unending nightmare causes the floor to be covered in the remains of humans, presumably of the other students who went missing. Now, before we can find out the fate of Caleb, we're interrupted by the first and only genuine threat in this game. A shadowy, twitching creature materializes behind us. Now, this caught me off guard the first time, as the entire rest of the game has no genuine threats. As such, I died while attempting to figure out how to beat this boss. On the bright side, this means we get to see the amazing game over screen that this game has. Now, something interesting of note is that you cannot kill the boss. Try as much as you want, but you'll always die if you attempt to kill this creature. The only way to win is to escape. Now, alongside the creature, a red save crystal materializes. Upon interacting with it, we find out that it's actually a load crystal. Now, in case you haven't put it together yet, the Caleb that we were reading about is the same Caleb whose save file we were seeing throughout the game. Now, with all other options grayed out, we have no choice but to load his save file, and there's no Caleb to be found. Instead, there's one last note from him. In our final note that Caleb leaves us, we find out what his fate is. After being alone in the sewers for so long, Caleb describes that he's losing control of his body. He can't stop shaking, and he desperately wants to get out of here. He attempts to leave the sewer, but I don't believe he did. The last line in his note states that he hopes he can even climb the ladder with all of his shaking, and the title of his note, Caleb's Final Note, implies that this is the last thing he wrote before something happened to him. I believe that the shadowy being that we just narrowly escaped right before finding this note was Caleb, fully turned, never being allowed to leave this place of torment. This was the final moment in this game that genuinely disturbed me. And the more that I thought about these notes, the more unnerved I was at the implications that they had. Now, after reading that messed up story, we get a key to unlock the literal highway to hell. This is the final stretch of the game, and here is where I want to bring up the strangest mechanical choice of this game. In every single area of this game, the player's controller is slightly different. Depending on what room you're in, the FOV, speed, and or falling speed are going to be slightly different. Now, it never stopped me from enjoying the game, but it's very distracting until you get used to it. The reason why I'm bringing it up now is that upon my second playthrough, this is the area where it all started to make sense. Other than the differing fall speeds, the movement speed and FOV change were meant to control how the player experiences the game, especially upon first playthrough. Now, I have two specific areas of note that I want to bring up when it comes to this, because they're the most obvious when you first play the game. First is when you leave the train station. The FOV is lowered to make the game feel as cramped and claustrophobic as possible, despite entering what would seem to be a large open area. And the second is the highway. You've managed to make it past all of the horrors Cordova has in store for you, and in return it rewards you with high movement speed and low fall speed. You're allowed to run and jump to your heart's content, but it also serves as a way to make what would be an annoying area into a fairly simple and interesting set to look at. You're not being forced to move in a crawl while walking around this area, as it is the largest area in the game. Now, this is especially good because in order to leave this area, you're required to backtrack 3 times. You have to make it all the way to the end of the highway, stopping in each building you see in order to find keys and petrol to start a plow that's placed all the way back at the beginning of the highway, in order to tear down a tree that is all the way back at the end of that highway. Along the way to the end to get the petrol, there's one interesting thing of note. By the first building you need to stop in, there's a crash school bus, which serves as a reminder of what happened to Caleb and all the students in his class. Once you make it past the highway segment, you make it to the final puzzle, as well as the ending of this game. Find 3 walnuts and crack them open in order to get moonstones. Use them to open a nearby glitched out suitcase. That gives us a key, which goes to a nearby cabin, which allows us to get ores. We can finally use that boat that we saw at the beginning to escape Cordova entirely and continue on our journey to find our wife. And now we come to the reason why I wrote the script in the first place, the ending. Upon interacting with the canoe to hell, the ending cutscene plays. That ugly-ass dog from earlier joins us on the boat, and we sail off into the darkness, gripping a picture of our wife Caroline. Now with that, the game proudly announces that the rest of the game is to be continued with a silly
Next time on Concluse.
This, for obvious reasons, initially upset me to no end. I played this game for hours, and I don't even get a conclusion to this story? Now, fortunately for all you horror fans, as well as fortunately for me, the game that was released in 2018 is getting a sequel this year. Now, not only that, it's releasing in 3 weeks from the upload date of this video. On July 14th, 2023, the sequel, and hopefully finale, of Concluse is coming out. And that's when we finally get to enter hell and find our wife. To close out, while I may have complained a lot about this game, I do find it to be a fun and interesting little experience. It's nothing amazing, but for what seems to be this team's first game, it's amazing what they did. I highly recommend that you play this game yourself, even after seeing this video, as there's still secret optional content that I didn't even talk about. And you should wishlist the sequel in order to bring more attention to this game that's been in development for 5 years. Now, links to both will be in the description, and if you enjoyed this video, why not subscribe? If you want to see more of me, follow me on Twitch as well. I'll be playing through the entirety of Concluse 2 on stream when it comes out. I'm also almost a Twitch affiliate, and when I get there, I'll be streaming another weird and creepy game, LSD Dream Emulator. Now, self-promotion aside, I see Concluse as an experimental little indie game that deserves a lot more praise and attention that it hasn't gotten over the last few years. And with that, my thoughts are Concluse.